I found something on the web that I wanted to share with you. This was from, I'm not going to give the student's name because it might be a tad bit embarrassing, but it was a student, I believe, from Austin Peay State University in Tennessee. Have you heard about this?
No.
And she wrote an introduction and a biography about you.
Good.
But the last line of the opening says, Foote is a tremendous writer who served in the Civil War, and his writings come from his personal experiences.
I'm glad she got that impression. That's the impression I wanted to. I'm in that book, you see, I hope. And that's the way I think history should be written, as if you were living in that time. It's totally unfair to look at it from 150-odd years later and pass judgment on what those people did without knowing what their values were and what the laws were even. It's what causes an awful lot of misunderstanding, trying to apply a different set of standards to a different nation, really.
In this Disney project that was announced, we will show you what it was like to be a slave. Whereupon a great outcry went up. We don't want to see that kind of thing. Almost the opposite of the Jews having Holocaust museums and all kinds of things. I regret that. I think they ought to celebrate their past the same way the Jews did about bondage in Egypt. They're not ashamed of it. They say, we came out of it. We conquered it. There's a great compromise, as it's called. It consists of Southerners admitting freely that it's probably best that the Union wasn't divided. And the North admits rather freely that the South fought bravely for a cause in which it believed. And that is a great compromise, and we live with that, and that works for us. We are now able to look at the war with some coolness, which we couldn't do before now. And incidentally, I very much doubt whether a history such as mine could have been written much before 100 years had elapsed. It took all that time for things to cool down. When I was a grade school boy in Mississippi, I knew obscene doggerel about Abraham Lincoln, left over from my parents and grandparents. Yankees were despised. When one of them was so unfortunate as to move to Greenville, Mississippi, he was despised. All that stopped. All that's over now. And the great compromise obtains. And I wish my black friends could do the same thing. The Illinois senator who didn't want the Daughters of the Confederacy in Richmond to have a Confederate symbol, not the battle flag, just a Confederate symbol on their stationery, got her fellow senators to disallow it. I do not understand that. That's a violation of the compromise, for example. And it's an arousal of bitterness. But she, along with a great many others, do not want to be reminded. She has every right to want to hide from history if she wants to. But it seems to me she's trying to hide history from us, and that's a mistake.
I regret very much what has happened about the flag. The flag that people look at now is the flag that was carried during the demonstrations against civil rights. It was carried by Ku Klux Klansmen, all that kind of thing, and that's what it represents to a great many people, and I don't wonder that they're feeling pain and wanting to take it down. I understand perfectly well they do that, but to my mind, they're misidentifying that flag. That flag represents many good things, and you have to translate yourself back into the time of secession to understand how some states should want to secede. The Constitution has not been amended in 61 years. This was the First Amendment, the Emancipation Amendment was the First Amendment in 61 years of the Constitution, and absolutely the First Amendment that ever had anything to do with anybody's private property. So they saw this amendment coming. They said, we don't want any part of this union. We want to get out of it. And people who say slavery had nothing to do with the war are just as wrong as people who say slavery had everything to do with the war. That was a very complicated civic thing. Robert Toombs or somebody once gave the best definition of that war I've ever heard. He said it was a war of one form of society against another form of society. And because one of those forms of society included chattel slavery, and the other side didn't, except to a limited extent, it's always been identified as a war over slavery. Believe me, no soldier on either side gave a damn about the slaves. They were fighting for other reasons entirely in their minds. Southerners thought they were fighting the Second American Revolution. Northerners thought they were fighting to hold the Union together. And that held true throughout the whole war, except for some people who were absolute partisans on both sides, fire eaters in South Carolina and abolitionists in Massachusetts. But most of the people were fighting because they were fighting for, Southerners once said, I'm fighting because you're down here. If you want to invade my home, you got me to fight. Others say you're trying to tear the fabric of the Union, therefore you should be put down and not allowed to do what you claim you want to do. It's a very complex subject, and I'm sorry to see it degenerate into such things as identifying that flag as a symbol of racism. It is not. It was never intended as such. Confederacy respected law above all things.